It's episode 597 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. On today's show, I am issuing my official apology to Nathaniel Lowe and talking about the Rangers' 4-game win streak heading into the Lone Star Series in Houston. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010 in year 4 hosting this podcast. It is Thursday, May 19th, and your Rangers are 17-19, sitting at third place in the American League West. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. And the best way to help grow the show is to subscribe on YouTube and comment anything below. Comment how dumb I am for saying Nathaniel Lowe can't hit dingers. I am so proud of, my stupidity. This is one of the few times that I'm proud of my stupidity, but I will wear it like a badge of honor. I have talked a lot more trash than is warranted, and I'll get into my apology a little bit later for Nathaniel Lowe. But right before he hit that home run, I thought, you know what? Why don't I just put this tweet out into the ether? I said, now would be a cool time for Nathaniel Lowe to prove me wrong about all the smack I've been talking about him not being able to hit dingers. And what does he do? He hits the Rangers' first walk-off home run of the season to cap a sweep of the Angels, who've been one of the best teams in the American League, and the Rangers come in and shellac them. They have had comeback win after comeback win after comeback win. There's not been a lot of actual thrashings. I mean, the scores have been very close in all these games because the Rangers have been able to score early. They've been able to rally. The offense looks like just completely different. Just absolutely different and astonishingly good after where it started. Pretty much every big hitter except for Marcus Simeon, who did have a 3-hit game. I'll maybe get into him little later on in this episode, but this was just a great team win for the Rangers. They went down 1-0 in early on in this game, and it looked a little shaky. Like, okay, well, it's a Shohei Ohtani game, so maybe the Rangers aren't going to be able to do it to him and completely sweep this Angels team right out of the building. But they did. They could, and they did. The Rangers were, again, a never say die team, a great team offensive performance, 12 hits for the Rangers in this one, even though they only scored 6 runs. They weren't super great with runners in scoring position. They left 11 runners on base, and they went 3 for 12 with runners in scoring position, which was good enough. It was good enough to get the win, and that's all the Rangers really needed. Hits from basically everybody in this one. Adolis Garcia and pinch runner Charlie Culberson, Andy Ibanez, and Eli White were the only ones who did not get hits in this one. Pretty much everyone was reaching base multiple times, except for Nathaniel Lowe, who only needed to reach base once and round the bases when he was reaching those bases. But this was, again, a monster offensive game from pretty much everyone. Jonah Heim continues to absolutely dominate Shohei Ohtani. He is batting 1,000 against him this year, a 3-hit game in this one, including his 5th double of the season. His OPS is now over 900 for catcher. That is pretty darn impressive. His OPS plus among catchers, 174. 174. He's got a 930 OPS on the season. The guy has been incredible. An absolute revelation. Leads the team in WAR at this point, according to Baseball Reference, with 1.3. Him and Corey Seager have been jockeying back and forth all week and pretty much all season because Jonah Heim and Corey Seager have been the 2 best players on this Rangers team. But offensively, the best bat in this one was, again, Kole Calhoun, who had another fantastic performance. His 3rd double of the season came off of Shohei Ohtani. Smacked it. Brad Miller had a home run and a multi-hit game at the top of the lineup. Brad Miller had his 6th home run of the season. Kole Calhoun had his 5th home run of the season. Came off of former Ranger great Jimmy Herget, of course, who looked really great and struck out Jonah Heim. But outside of that Kole Calhoun home run, I mean, Kole Calhoun is just absolutely on one. Absolutely on one in the month of May. He has been one of the best hitters in freaking baseball. He has been absolutely outstanding. In his last 7 games, I keep reading off these last 7, but like they keep getting more and more impressive because he keeps putting up these monster performances. In his last 7, now he's hitting .478 on base, .552, slugging 1174. 1174. That's an OPS of like 1,700 in a week span. He's got 4 home runs, 2 doubles. You know, he had an OPS of a 375 in April. He was one of the worst hitters in all of baseball. Now he's one of the best. You know, he has an OPS in the month of May of 1185. That is right around what Mike Trout is doing this season, having one of his best seasons ever. He brought his season OPS up to 740. That will freaking play. That's up 365 points in just 2 weeks worth of games. 14 games for him in May, and he has been so freaking good for the Rangers. I mean, he is obviously doing whatever these hitting coaches are working on. It did not take for the first month. It looked like nobody's offense was really taking, except for like maybe a handful, maybe like 10 guys were actually hitting the baseball well. And of course, one was, you only had the best hitters in baseball like Mike Trout and Taylor Ward. And even Shohei Ohtani was a little suspect to that. But, it's looking like those guys are turning it around. I mean, Jared Walsh, who was an all-star last year, had a multi-home run game against the Rangers. The Rangers pitching was mostly pretty good. But, again, Taylor Ward is a really stinking, or Jared Walsh, is a really stinking good baseball. I mean, so is Taylor Ward. He only had 1 hit and a couple of walks in this one, and his OPS is down to 1209 now. Mike Trout's is up to 1121. It's just absolutely staggering. And the Rangers were able to neutralize Shohei Ohtani as a hitter in this one. Not a great day for him. He had a double play, also struck out twice, went 0 for 5 in this one, but on the mound was as good as he's been. Apparently there were some concerns. I was listening to the Locked On Angels boys talk about how apparently there were some concerns about Shohei Ohtani's velocity, and there was no concern about that. That guy was pumping in hundreds, 101, absolute gas, looked fantastic. His splitter is just so good. Every one of his pitches is just so good. The Rangers weren't able to get to him too much, only scored a couple of runs on him in 6 innings, but we're able to get on base at a pretty decent clip. 8 base runners against him in total, but he struck out 7 and looked as good as he is. He's just fantastic. It's honestly an absolute joy to watch, and it's even more of a joy to watch Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani be really good at baseball when their team is losing to your team. It's a lot more fun to watch it that way, as opposed to, the Rangers are going to lose this one because, Shohei Ohtani is one of the best players in baseball, and Mike Trout is one of the greatest players in baseball history, and, you just got to tip your cap. But it's even more fun when they're doing their amazing things, and the Rangers are just straight up better. One of my favorite things about this. Really great offensive performance for pretty much everyone involved. A 3-hit day by Marcus Simeon. Really, really loved what I saw from him. All of them were singles. All of them were kind of hustling out. And, none of them were hit particularly hard. Honestly, his hardest hit ball, I believe, was a fly ball hit into left field. On the warning track, play was made by the left fielder, Mr. Wade. And, he ended up having a 3-hit day. And he's been on base every single time in every single game of this 4-game winning streak by the Rangers. It's been mostly just like one time in each time, but 3-hit game today, starting to look like maybe he's coming out of it. I'm going to get a little bit more into why I'm concerned about him tomorrow on tomorrow's episode, unless he has some monster breakout game, which would be nice to not have to do that, but I'm still probably going to do that in tomorrow's episode a little bit, unless he has like a 4-home run game and then completely changes everything. But coming up, I'm going to get into how great the pitching looked. Another solid performance by Dane Dunning, and a little bit of an injury pop-up with the Rangers closer. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. You guys know about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bars that have ever been created. And today, I got to tell you guys about the brownie batter puffs. I love brownies, but you know what I love more? I love brownie batter. It's absolutely delicious. Sometimes I eat, had the batter, or like while I'm making the brownies. Imagine if you could just lick that spatula clean and get some protein in. Yeah, you're in luck, because Built Bar has a new creation. This one is better than ever. The brownie batter puff. You heard me right. The puff takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they're available right now at built.com. They're 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, and 7 grams of sugar in the Brownie Batter Puffs. They are the perfect pick-me-up for any day. Brownie Batter Puffs will have you completely forgetting that you're eating a protein bar. No need to pinch yourself. This is real life. Go to built.com to get Brownie Batter Puffs now. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Now, let's talk a little bit about this ejection and pitching. This was a weird game, and Joe Maddon got ejected late in this one. They kind of panned off it in the cameras. I wasn't able to see the beat writers talking about what exactly happened, but I'll go through what exactly happened, because it was just kind of a weird ejection. It wasn't like he was, arguing a balls and strike call. Here's what happened in the ninth inning. Jose Suarez came in the ninth. He struck out Brad Miller and then allowed back-to-back singles by Marcus Simeon and Corey Seager. Adolis Garcia grounded into a fielder's choice. Seager was out at second base. He had runners on the corners. And then there was a mound visit. Then Kole Calhoun comes up, and then he walks, and the bases are loaded, I believe, at that point. And then there's another mound visit, and apparently, I don't know what was happening there, but they come back because he's got to get his pitcher out of there. Once you visit the mound twice in one inning to get a pitcher, he's out of there. That's the rule. And I don't know what was going on. Maybe he was arguing the balls and strike from the walk to Kole Calhoun. I don't know what it was. I don't know what he was hoping to accomplish there other than prolonging the game. There's just something about Angels managers and making games go much longer than they should, just last forever into the night, which is super, super annoying when they start at 9 p.m. I feel like every single Angels game takes forever, because we had Mike Scioscia, who loved to just get as many relievers into a single game as he could. And Joe Maddon's basically the exact same way. Once Scioscia was out of there, I thought, okay, now not every single Angels game is going to last until 2 a.m. Nope, here comes Joe Maddon, do the exact same thing. I don't know what he was hoping to accomplish there. Maybe just trying to fire up his team, just yell about something. If you're trying to get thrown out of there, maybe pick something that's worth yelling about. But there really wasn't. There wasn't any bad calls. There wasn't any horrible umpiring decisions. Just all right, I'm mad. My team's lost 3 straight against this team that I thought we were better than, and our record showed that we're better than, so I'm just going to be mad and get thrown out of a game. Okay, Joe Maddon, you do you. Whatever. Just a weird time to get thrown out of the game. But let's look at this pitching staff. A great outing by Dane Dunning. Went 6 innings, only allowed a couple of runs. Both of those came off of solo shots from, again, Jared Walsh and Mike Trout. That'll happen. It'll happen. But he also had some really great outings. The first inning, I was starting to get a little worried, because the first batter was Taylor Ward, and he has been incredible this season. And he got walked on 6 pitches, and the balls were not particularly close. He went only a sinker and changeup to him, and was missing his spots by quite a bit. Ward was not having any of it. And then, here you go. Mike Trout in the first inning comes up with a guy on first. Great. So now one mistake pitch, and you're down 2-0 before anyone's had a chance to even grab some popcorn or grab their seats. But he worked a great at-bat against Mike Trout, was able to strike him out on a sinker that was down and in pretty far off the plate in a, I believe, 7-pitch at-bat, and looked fantastic. Then Shohei Ohtani, he was able to get him to ground out sharply to first base, Nathaniel Lowe, where he turned a double play, and really solid defense there by Nathaniel Lowe. Overall, I've been pretty critical of the defense, and I feel like rightly so, but that was a really nice defensive play. Throws it right to Corey Seager, and plays game catch, gets it back, and they are out of that first inning. Overall, really solid performance. I don't love that he had 3 walks, but they did come. 2 of them were against Taylor Ward, which, again, that'll happen. And the other one was against Jared Walsh. So all guys who are pretty much all-star level players. You're not walking guys down low in the order, so I guess that's okay. Still not great, but, overall a pretty solid performance. 6 base runners in this one. 2 of those came around to score on those round trippers, and he struck out 6. Really solid outing by Dane Dunning. Liked what I saw. Brock Burke, another great inning. Just 1 inning of work. John King, a really impressive 8th inning, came in and got a 7-pitch inning against the top of the order, got Ward out, struck out Mike Trout on 3 pitches, which is really hard to do, and got Ohtani to ground out on the first pitch. Very efficient inning. Maybe would like to see him for the 9th, because it was not a great outing for Matt Bush, who you would have thought that it would, since it was a save opportunity, that it would have been his ball. But it seems like he has the beginnings of a blister. Not quite a blister, but he was not available for today and will be out for a couple of days. No IL trip at this point. So in comes Matt Bush, and had probably his worst outing as a Ranger so far this season. But again, his worst outing, after a whole bunch of good ones, is fine. I mean, he gave up the leadoff double to Anthony Rendon. Then Jared Walsh hit his second home run of the game, his 8th of the season, and tied the game up at 4. And the Rangers weren't able to get it to go to extra, or were able to get it to go to extras, which you start with a runner on base. So again, here comes Dennis Santana, the guy who they bring in for those special situations with guys on base, because he has done a really good job in that. And he did allow 1 run, but again, I feel like that's gonna happen where he was facing the lineup and the guys who he was facing with a runner on second base. This is one of the best lineups in all of baseball in the Angels. They have just such a ridiculous depth. I mean, Taylor Ward, you get Taylor Ward, Mike Trout, and Shohei Ohtani, and you got a runner on second base. The Angels are probably going to score 1. Like, that's just the reality of the situation there. But he limited it to 1, and was able to get out of that inning and get the Rangers to the bottom, down just 1 run. And in comes Nathaniel Lowe, who I'm going to talk about how great he has been. Well, not great he has been, but what he's doing that makes me confident that my criticism of him so far have not been fair, and a little bit about how great this offense has been. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your betting, sports, and information. You can find the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, even down to next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts taking fans through the season like no other network. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I am officially dubbing this offense fixed after this week. It's fixed. That's it. The baseball is done. It has been fixed, undejuiced, whatever the correct terminology is. The baseball is no longer dead as a doornail. It is flying off the bats like it should, and like it should have been for, since the beginning of the season. But Nathaniel Lowe made me look really stupid. I tweeted about how, this would be a nice time for him to prove me wrong and start hitting dingers like I said that he hasn't been able to do. And he hits his second on the very first pitch, lines a ball down the right field line, hit the absolute tarnation out of that baseball, 106 miles an hour, 387 feet down the right field line, and the Rangers walk it off to sweep this series against the Angels. Now, some of my criticisms about Nathaniel Lowe, I didn't love the trade at first, because I didn't love the Rangers trading lottery ticket prospects, the guys very, very low in the system. You don't really know what they're going to be. They could end up being, all-stars. They could end up burning out before they even hit Double-A. But there's a lot of potential there, and the guys that they gave up seemed like pretty decent prospects at that point. And when you're that deep in the rebuild, I didn't love the Rangers trading away those young lottery ticket kind of guys, because those are the ones you hold on to, because you end up looking really stupid if one of those guys ends up being, you trade one of them for like a James Shields, and they end up being Fernando Tatis Jr. That's exactly what happened for the Padres, or for the White Sox, who were the ones who signed Fernando Tatis Jr., but he wasn't anywhere near that kind of a prospect at that point. Trade him for James Shields, and they end up looking stupid. It happens all the time with some other prospects as well. It happened less and less lately because of things like exactly that James Shields trade. So, again, I didn't really get it. He was fine last year. Pretty good. One of the best Rangers hitters. But he struggled against fastballs, and he didn't hit the ball particularly hard. for a guy who is just offense only first baseman. He's a bad defensive first baseman. That's fine. If you can bring value as an offensive first baseman, that's good. He had a 357 on base last year, but slugged only 415. That was not quite good enough. The level of an offense first baseman, 18 home runs, 24 doubles. Like he just needed to hit the ball harder, and he needed to hit the ball a little more. And I thought that these new hitting coaches would benefit him the most because they helped in San Francisco with guys hitting fastballs that were not hitting fastballs, and that was his pretty much big bugaboo. Anything 95 miles an hour plus, he was pretty hapless against it last year and was not crushing baseballs, not being as aggressive. He was a very patient hitter, and that's a great thing. You know, when you have your on base nearly at 360, that's good. That's valuable offensively, but it's more valuable when you're a faster guy. That's fine. Base runners are still good. Having more when you're a base runner, when you're standing on base and someone hits a home run, it doesn't matter how fast you are, that still counts for one more run, and more base runners is always a good thing. But when you're a guy who has a big bat and has that raw power in it, we don't see it a whole lot, but when he does get a hold of a baseball, he can hit the absolute crap out of it. Would have liked to see him be a little bit more aggressive this year, and that's what I was hoping for. And by my eye test, that I didn't think that he was doing that, but I dove into the numbers, and it seems like he has changed his approach a pretty decent amount. He also hit a baseball 100 miles an hour in the 8th inning, so like he's hitting the ball a little bit harder. But I went to look at his StatCast numbers, and here are some of the biggest changes in him. His hard hit percentage is down nearly 5.5%. His walk rate is down nearly 6%. He's swinging a lot more, over 5% more. He's swinging at the first pitch 8% more. He's getting a strike on the first pitch nearly 6% more than last year. He's getting more pitches in the zone. He's swinging at more pitches in the zone, and he's making more contact. He's chasing just a little bit more, and he's not able to foul off pitches outside the zone, so he's swinging and missing on pitches outside of the zone a little bit more. But this is what I wanted from him. The results haven't been there this year. They just haven't, and they haven't been there for pretty much anybody. Right now he's got a slugging percentage of 315, an on base of 287, and an OPS of 602. He just hit his second home run of the season. He's got 4 doubles to pair with that. But, you know, looking back and getting this lens moving forward, seeing that he is doing the things that I wanted him to do, that I think would make him a better offensive player, I think I'm encouraged. I'm definitely encouraged. He had a really nice at-bat in the 8th inning of Tuesday night's game to give the Rangers a go-ahead single that would make it 6-5, and that lead would stand up. He has looked a little bit better. He's played less against lefties. I still think that if you're going to be an offense first guy, you should play more you should be able to hit against both lefties and righties. Maybe you don't have to crush nearly as well against lefties, but still, if you're going to be the Rangers everyday first baseman, you need to be in the lineup every day. But I do like what I'm seeing from these advanced numbers. He's being a little bit more aggressive. I was a little worried that this Rangers lineup in general, I called it Nathaniel Lowe syndrome of, having a lot of power and just being a little too picky, a little too worried about on base and less concerned with crushing baseballs. This offense has turned that around, and it's starting to look like the time that it took, and also the baseballs being rejuiced or whatever, I think is also helping a little bit. But this offense is looking just about as deep as I was hoping. I'm setting the bar for like 650 OPS at this point in the season. I mean, hopefully the numbers even back out with the baseball being back to normal, and the numbers around baseball aren't going to be as far down. But the Rangers have several hitters with an OPS of 650 looking like decent offensive pieces. I mean, you have Jonah Heim leading the way at a 930 OPS. Corey Seager is up to 759 at this point. Adolis Garcia at 683. Kole Calhoun is all the way up to 741. I mean, the guy has just been absolutely on one lately. Brad Miller, OPS of 687. Mitch Garver is just under that 650 barometer. Eli White is just over it at 660. And Sam Huff at 889, who he also has a 33% strikeout rate, which is not great. He has not walked once in his 18 plate appearances so far in 5 games, but he will. And I would also like to see him hit a baseball really, really far, because Sam Huff has some of the best raw power in the entire Rangers organization. And that's saying something, because Adolis Garcia has got some real ridiculous raw power. And I'm sure Nathaniel Lowe is up there, and I would like to see him continue to prove me wrong. So I almost want to stay on my point of Nathaniel Lowe can't hit fastballs, he can't hit at all, because maybe he's fueled by the disrespect. I don't know, But I do want to issue my apology for my criticism being pretty much wrong. Going back and look at the numbers, seeing that he is doing the things that I wanted him to do last year and being more aggressive, that has been really nice to see. And it takes a while. There's been a lot of excuses made about this hitting staff, which were valid excuses. There was no time to implement these new plans. It's looking a lot better. It's more individualized, which is what you need. And I had some criticisms that I felt were justified with how bad the offense was in the first month. And Kole Calhoun talked a lot of trash and said that they weren't doing as great a job of specializing it individually. I think those comments are, in hindsight, might look a little petty and a little just personal, because Willie, I think at this point there's not much of a solution. The Rangers are just going to have to trade him for basically nothing, and I do think that he's going to go and hit somewhere else, and he might have a Nelson Cruz-like career in that he did a lot of not much and had a bunch of injuries and just bad luck, and once he turned like 28, that's when he became a consistent major league regular. I mean, he doesn't have like Nelson Cruz's like 80 great power, and I don't think that Kole Calhoun is going to keep hitting dingers until he's like 87 years old like Nelson Cruz. But I do think he's going to have a pretty decent major league career, because there is a really good hitter in there, and I think it's a bummer that he's going to need to change scenery. And if the Rangers had just been able to give him more time, if Kole Calhoun was still up while these baseballs were rejuiced, then I think he would be putting up some pretty decent numbers. The Rangers would have some decisions to make about who is going to play left field every single day, with the DH spot being given to Mitch Garver. By the way, I mean, Woody has said that it's going to be a while until Mitch Garver is ready to catch again. I think that might be a month, maybe by the All-Star break. That's about how long I think it'll be, because he hasn't even started a throwing program. Mitch Garver is. By the way, he is up to AAA. I didn't see what he did in yesterday's rehab game with AAA, but only had the one game here in Frisco. Also, Albert Abreu is in AAA on his injury rehab assignment. We'll see if they call him up, if they want to mess with that pen and where they are right now. Honestly, if they do, then Garrett Richards is pretty much the first name on that list that they might part ways with, because he has been pretty darn uninspiring in 10 games so far, and I don't necessarily see him turning that around. I really don't like that signing. I didn't like it at the time, and I like it even less now. He's 34 years old. The Rangers gave him way too much money for a guy who has been pretty much washed everywhere he's been. He hasn't had a sub-4 ERA since 2018 with the Angels, back when he was still a starter. I mean, he did some decent work last year in Boston, had his moments, but overall was not super effective really in 136 innings. So I don't know. He's making $4.5 million. I don't know that the Rangers are going to straight up DFA him to get Albert Abreu back, who, again, has some really nasty stuff, but could probably use some refinement in AAA. Maybe they make that IL stint a little bit longer, because he had some real walk issues when he was up with the big league team at this point. But again, we'll see. We'll see where he lands. He's only pitched in 6 games so far this year with the Rangers, but did have 11 walks in that span to just 8 strikeouts. So, yeah, maybe some time figuring out how to throw his stuff for strikes could be good for Albert Abreu. I don't necessarily think that him coming up and disrupting this bullpen is something that's on the immediate horizon, but it's something to keep an eye on as well. Spencer Patton is still in AAA, so we'll see. He might be one that I would call up before I called up Albert Abreu. But I don't know. I don't think any roster spot is on the immediate horizon, except for whenever Mitch Garver comes back and is relegated to full-time DH role. Be nice to see him back in the lineup with the rejuiced baseballs, because he got hurt right before that happened. So we'll see how that works. We'll see what he looks like, and we'll be really excited to see him put into this Rangers lineup that is hitting absolute moonshots, with Kole Calhoun looking like a absolute murderer, with Jonah Heim looking incredible, Nathaniel Lowe looking like he's turning it around, and Corey Seager. All that before Marcus Simeon starts to turn around. I have some hope that Simeon's going to turn around. Look briefly at this Houston series, a 4-game series in Houston. The Rangers will face off against Justin Verlander, the man who has defied Father Time to his face. pretty blatantly, pretty boldly this year has a sub-2 ERA. On Thursday, it's going to be Glenn Otto, the Houston kid, the Rice kid, against Framber Valdez. On Friday, we're going to see Martin Perez versus Christian Javier. That's going to be a fun Friday matchup. And then John Gray versus Justin Verlander in the Saturday matchup, going to be a lot of fun. And finally finishing it off with Taylor Hearn versus Jose Urquidy, who I believe just got roughed up pretty badly in Boston. Finally, the Astros dropped 2 out of 3. They've been winning pretty much every baseball game since the start of May. The little second baseman is back. The second baseman is back and absolutely crushing baseballs. The rest of their offense looks pretty darn good, but they're coming off a rough start to their week. The Rangers are red hot. And, shouts to the Locked On Astros boys who said that the Houston Astros would have no problem sweeping these Rangers in 4 games, which I thought was pretty arrogant and, pretty Houston of them, especially since the Rangers are riding a 4-game winning streak where they just swept the Angels, just took one off of Boston, who did the same thing to the Rangers that they did to Boston. We're pretty competitive in one of those other 2 games. Still, Boston offense figuring it out is going to make them pretty tough for everybody, especially for this Astros team, who I think has gotten a little bit lucky in their ridiculously long winning streak to start May. And the Rangers are playing their best baseball of the season. The bats are hot. Marcus Simeon hopefully is going to break out. If Marcus Simeon just saves all of his first home runs for the first couple of months for this 4-game series and hits like 3 or 4 or 5 or 17 of them in this series, I wouldn't be mad. He's got those Crawford boxes in left field, like these home runs or these fly balls that he keeps hitting to left field deep on the warning track should be home runs. In Houston, he's got his 4th highest OPS of any stadium comes in Minute Maid Park. It is 4th highest behind Toronto, Buffalo, and Angels Stadium. So he's got an 845 OPS in 47 games there. So riding a 4-game on base streak, coming off a 3-hit game. I'm really hoping that Marcus Simeon can turn it around, but I'm still a little bit concerned about him offensively to start this season. I'm sure he'll figure it out, but I'll talk a little bit more about my concerns on tomorrow's episode, hopefully after a series opening win against those darn Houston Astros. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. Now for your second listen, make it Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, takes you through the major leagues, both past and present, with his unique perspective. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank y'all so much for listening, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.